Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 27th February 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. Assembly polls to kick off on March 27th. So, the Election Commission of India yesterday announced that the assembly elections in the state of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, West Bengal and Assam and the Union Territory of Puducherry will be held on March 27th and April 29th. So, this was announced on Friday. This will kick off the election process for the next general elections. So in these general elections, there are again two by-polls to fill two Lok Sabha seats that were vacated recently, and this will, in an essence, give chance to the current ruling establishment to either win back new seats or give a new mandate to the opposition party in the country. Coming to the next article, India-China agreed to establish new hotline. So in a bid to ensure timely communication in the times of crisis or during crises, India and China external foreign ministers or ministries agreed that they are going to establish a new hotline between both of the countries. So these hotlines are communication lines between any two countries that have hostilities, because if two countries are having hostilities among them, communication becomes a major issue. A lot of times wars have been fought over miscommunication issues and misunderstandings. To ease out any miscommunications and misunderstanding between both of our countries, that is China and India, we are establishing a new communication hotline between two of our countries. This will ensure that in times of crisis we can communicate with one another and try to solve the issue without firing any bullets or going to a full-scale war. This was ensured and agreed by both sides mutually that we are going to establish a hotline. This is entirely because of what has happened or what has transpired over the last year between India and China in high altitudes of Ladakh. Now, during both the cases, China was the aggressor. India tried to bring back the status quo to pre-April 2020 situation, but China did not agree. So communication lines like hotlines like this do exist between other countries such as US and Russia, China and Russia, because they share hostilities with one another. Coming to the next part of it, India on its part made it clear to China that it is not realistic to insulate the relationship from what has happened during the boundary crisis. So since the first disengagement plan has been announced and completed, China has been beating out this rhetoric that whatever is happening at the border is not an issue between the relationship between India and China. You have to insulate that relationship and ensure that economic ties remain concrete and strong despite border crisis. On its part, India has clearly indicated that without solving the border issue, you cannot continue with the fact that we are going to maintain a normal economic ties with one another. First, clear the border crisis, then we'll talk about our economic ties, because since the beginning of border issue, Indian government has been clearly imposing sanctions and outright blocking or even deleting apps from the Chinese makers and even not allowing certain investments from Chinese companies to be made in Indian industry. So China wanted to detach the economic part of our relationship and the border crisis, but India clearly said that one cannot go without the other. So first clear the border crisis, then we'll talk about the economic ties. Coming to the next article, no postal ballots for NRIs this time, Election Commission of India. So the Election Commission of India has been exploring the concept of postal ballots for non-residential Indians, and they have even conducted certain feasibility studies, and they have been building up their capacity to accept the postal ballot system from NRIs and other parties, because not only the NRIs are unable to vote, there are certain logistical issues when employees move from one region to the other during polling duties or any other duties, who may not be able to cast their vote in their local elections. So for the past few years, the Election Commission of India has been exploring the concept of postal ballots various reasons, just to ensure that everybody gets their right to vote and they can ably use their right to vote, because it's a fundamental right in a sense. Now, since elections in the 4 states and 1 UT has been announced recently, everybody was anticipating that this might be the first time that Election Commission of India will roll out the postal ballot system for the non-residential Indians. But the Chief Election Commissioner yesterday said that the facility would not be extended to them for the upcoming elections in Assam, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, Kerala and West Bengal, because they couldn't agree with the modalities of how this entire process is going to work out with the Ministry of External Affairs. Because at the end of the day, though capacity building has been done and Election Commission of India is ready to roll out the electoral ballot system, it still has to consult with the Ministry of External Affairs, just because NRIs are involved. On its part, ECA has sent a letter to MEA asking for its proposals and how they both can come to terms and roll out this for the NRIs. So on its part, the Ministry of External Affairs ministries clearly said that there are certain stakeholders that need to be consulted, just to ensure that the process is smooth and no faults are found, and clearly stated that extending the facility would take some time, as an amendment is also required. On its part, there are certain logistical issues and legal issues, because logistically Ministry of External Affairs is not ready to take up the burden of the postal ballot system, because till now it didn't had any resources to build towards or deviate towards receiving postal ballots from NRIs. Now it has to build a system to accept the postal ballots, because no postal ballot cannot reach India. They have to be sent to the nearby embassies. So they have to come up with a system where they have to receive, verify and validate and send the data back to the Election Commission of India. So they are still working on the logistics aspect of it, and that is why MEA said that they have to discuss with various stakeholders, just to ensure the feasibility is realistic and non-problematic. And coming to the legal part of it, amendments have to be made to the current legal position, just to allow the fact that postal ballots will be validated legally. So these are the two hurdles faced in front of the postal ballot system that ECA wants to adopt for the next general elections. Coming to the next article, select a vaccination center, book appointment. Now we are in the second phase of COVID-19 vaccination, where 60 plus years aged people are eligible for vaccination, and people who are 45 plus with underlying health conditions or comorbidities are eligible to get a COVID-19 vaccine. For 60 plus years aged persons, there is no certificate needed to receive the coronavirus vaccine. They can register themselves and get the vaccine without any hurdles. But for the people with underlying conditions who are aged above 45 plus, they need to get a certificate clearly indicating that they have underlying health conditions and they are eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine. Now the government has come out with the standard operating procedures and how people can enroll for the vaccine. So the first beneficiaries, that is, they have to self-register through CoWIN 2.0 platform or Arogya Setu app. If the person cannot use digital technology to register themselves online, they can simply walk to the nearby notified COVID-19 vaccination center and register themselves. When a person registers themselves through CoWIN 2.0 or Arogya Setu, or they physically go to the center and registers themselves, they will be given a time slot and they have to go to the vaccination center at the time slot and receive the vaccine. So the CoWIN platform tracks the person's registration state to the till second dose is received, and post second dose any adverse effects are also noted through this or tracked through this digital medium. Now coming to the paying part of it, the government clearly came out and said that there are two options for citizens. If the person wants to get vaccinated at a government run center, meaning a government operated center, the vaccine will be free of cost. If a person wants to get vaccinated at a private center, the rates of the vaccines are prefixed and they have to pay that prefixed money and get vaccinated. Here the question comes whether a patient can choose the vaccine which they will be administered, whether it can they choose between Bharat Biotech's Covaxin or Serum Institute's Covishield. That is not clear yet, because there is a lot of this is in rollout phase right now. We have to wait and see how the government will come out with distribution strategy, because it has to, the vaccines number is still limited. We don't have the full capacity because there is a lot of stress on manufacturing of these two vaccines, because these two companies should not only meet the domestic demand, but they have also need to meet the export demand, because a lot of orders have been placed on both the vaccines from various countries, particularly in the case of Covishield, because Covishield has more proven phase 3 trial efficacy data compared to Covaxin. So as I said, it is free of charge if they choose to get at a government vaccination center, and they have to showcase a photocopy or photo ID, because you have to ensure proof of identity if you are receiving the vaccine, because you are not only getting the vaccine, the government should also be able to track you post vaccination, just to ensure that you don't have any side effects or adverse reactions. And those taking vaccine at any designated or empaneled private healthcare facility will have to pay a prefixed charge. Now here comes the part of private entities. In order to ensure mass rollout on mass vaccination, we have to allow private players in vaccination process. That is what the government second phase vaccination seems to be. It takes care of two things. One is it will be able to test private players, because if they are up to the mark, government can allow more private hospitals to come in and mass vaccinate people. Coming to the next article, US welcomes India-Pak ceasefire agreement. So this is in response to Indian government and the Pakistani government at the DG Director General level reiterating that they are going to abide by the 2003 ceasefire agreement. Now the United States State Department has welcomed the announcement by India and Pakistan that they would observe the 2003 ceasefire along the line of control. So the White House has called clearly the two countries to build upon this progress, and State Department encouraged a reduction in tension and violence at the LOC. Now this is the standard response to anything in relations to India and China, because both are nuclearly armed countries and there is no love lost between these two countries, that is India and Pakistan. So any response from State Department of United States is always balanced, particularly in the case now, because they need our help to counter China and they need Pakistan's help to counter Taliban in Afghanistan. So they cannot play favorites in this situation. This comes in the backdrop where former US President Donald Trump at multiple occasions had offered his services to negotiate between Pakistan and India. Even in one case, particularly in regarding to Kashmir, and even during one interaction with the press, he clearly indicated that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked himself personally to mediate between both the countries, to which our Foreign Affairs Minister has categorically denied in the Parliament floor. So there is a lot of history between India, US and India-Pakistan relations in the context of US State Department. So any statement from State Departments at this current juncture, because they are trying to wrap up the war in Afghanistan and they need a partner to counter China in Indian Ocean and at border, particularly in Indian Ocean, because whether we have the capacity or not is the second question, but we can right now clearly dominate the Indian Ocean region. So that is why any statement from State Department is balanced. Coming to the next article, PSU banks, insurers important. Now this is Prime Minister Modi was addressing a webinar on effective implementation of budget provisions regarding financial services. Day before yesterday, we went through an article where he was requesting foreign investors to use the government's disinvestment program or scheme to invest their money in underutilized and unutilized public sectors that government is selling right now, that is privatizing right now. In order to balance the statement, because there was a lot of backlash to his speech during that interaction, now he is trying to balance by saying that though we are going ahead full steam ahead with disinvestment and privatization plans, still public sector bankings and public sector insurance, that is particularly in the case of insuring, LIC is the biggest insurer in India, they need to play a role just to ensure balance in the markets and financial sectors. We are reassuring investors and public at the same time that we are not entirely pulling government or public entities out of the financial services or financial sector. Whatever disinvestment or privatization we are talking about is at a limited scale, but even though we are disinvesting, even though we are privatizing public sector entities and public sector units at large scale, the impact it is going to have is little, and still even though privatization is going on, government will still have a presence in private sector banks and public sector banks and public sector insurances. We will still have presence through certain public sector banks and public sector insurers. So the new policy of disinvestment of public sector enterprises covered the financial sector as well, and private enterprises were being promoted whenever possible. So we are trying to balance both public sector entities and private sector entities, because government still has control over the public services in financial services in India. Coming to the next article, panel seeks more data to clear Sputnik 5. Sputnik 5 is a vaccine developed by the Russia. They have tied up with Dr. Reddy's lab in India. As Oxford vaccine has tied up with Serum Institute of India, Bharat Biotech is our own indigenous vaccine developer, but Sputnik is a Russian vaccine. They have tied up with Dr. Reddy's lab in India to manufacture the vaccine and export and domestic use. Both Serum Institute's Covishield, Bharat Biotech's Covaxin received emergency use because they were able to give their phase 2 trial data and phase 3 trial data to a subject expert committee set up by the Central Drug Standard Control Organization of Indian government. Now the Sputnik 5 vaccine makers, that is Dr. Reddy's, approached this special expert committee for emergency use certification, to which the subject expert committee, the SEC, rejected their approval because they were asking to showcase their phase 1 trial data and phase 2 trial data, and the subject expert committee has also asked for additional information of efficacy for this particular vaccine from Russia also, and what was the efficacy data when this same vaccine was administered to Indian citizens. Since they don't have a concrete or comprehensive efficacy data and trial data regarding Sputnik 5, the Sputnik 5 did not receive the emergency use certification or emergency use authorization for COVID-19. On the second hand, on Friday, Bharat Biotech signed a deal with the Brazilian government to supply the Brazil with 20 million doses of Covaxin. It's a private agreement, though it has been negotiated through both sides government, but it's a government to company agreement, meaning Brazil government made an agreement with a private company, that is Bharat Biotech in India, and they have purchased 20 million doses of Covaxin. These are the two things here. Coming to the next article, MBS behind capture or kill Khashoggi operation. So few years back, Washington Post columnist and critic of Saudi Arabian kingdom, particularly Jamal Khashoggi, was killed in an embassy, Saudi Arabian embassy in Turkey. Now, leaked US intelligence documents have clearly indicated that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, popularly known as MBS, approved an operation to capture or kill the descendant journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered in 2018. He was brutally murdered, his body was dismembered and burned to ashes. A team from Saudi Arabia visited Turkey. He was captured inside the consulate of Saudi Arabia in Istanbul, where he was tortured, interrogated, and dismembered. Now this was an international event because Washington Post is owned by Amazon. Jeff Bezos even visited Turkey and made a huge statement stating that nobody will be able to get away with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Now, Khashoggi though he was a Saudi Arabian spokesperson for a long time, due to lot of misunderstandings or distrust between Khashoggi and the royal family of Saudi Arabia, he fled to United States and took up residence in United States, where he became a columnist for Washington Post. He was a dissident because he was very critical of the policies of Saudi Arabian government in various he was critical of the Saudi Arabian government and its actions. So he wrote critical articles, critical op-eds or editorials in Washington Post, particularly on the Crown Prince, that is Mohammed bin Salman's actions and his policies. So it is very clear that it was a state-sanctioned operation where Khashoggi was killed in Turkey. Coming to the next article, domestic business needs more government support. India hasn't done enough. Jayashankar. Now, calling for more government support for domestic business. Whatever we are doing, whatever the policies we are bringing, there is a disconnect between government policy and ground level implementation, because as much as we are exploring or imploring businesses to invest in India and develop each and every sector in India, we are forgetting about the cost of improving or increasing employment rates. So he is particularly talking about the jobless growth was not a testimony to the policies of growing country, because there is a lot of unemployment in India, and though we are seeing a high percentage of investments in India, that investment percentage is not having a positive impact on employment rates. Whenever growth or economic recovery is only possible when there is high percentage of employment rate in any country. So though we are talking about growth, we have also considered the human aspect of it, that is employment percentage. He pointed out that there existed a huge potential manufacturing which has not been fostered by the right policies at home till now. Growth happens all while employment rate also increases. Thank you. Have a good day.